Chapter 11. Crossroads. The three of them stood motionless, looking down in uneasy silence. What happened to Shifty didn't come as a shock, but it was still a hard thing to digest. An ominous feeling settled in their hearts, seeing the broken body of their companion. It was too easy to imagine one of them sharing the same fate. No one knew what to say. After a minute or so, Scholar finally sighed. It's a good thing that you took most of the supplies he had been carrying. A bit heartless, but not wrong, Sonny thought, giving the older slave a careful look. Scholar frowned, realizing that his mask of a kind-hearted gentleman had slipped for a second, and hurriedly added, in a somber tone, "May you rest in peace, my friend." Wow, what a performance! Actually, Sonny had not believed in his benevolent act for a second. Every kid from the outskirts knew that people who acted kind for no reason were the ones to be most wary of. They were either fools or monsters. Scholar didn't seem like a fool, so Sonny became cautious of him from the moment they met. He got this far by being a mistrustful cynic, and there was no reason to change now. "We have to go," Hero said, casting one last look down. His voice was even, but Sonny could feel a well of emotion behind it. He just couldn't tell what that emotion was. Scholar sighed and turned away, too. Sonny stared at the bloodied rocks for a few more seconds. Why do I feel so guilty, he thought, bewildered by this unexpected reaction. He got what he deserved. A little unsettled, Sonny turned around and followed his two remaining companions. Just like that, they left Shifty behind and continued to climb. At this altitude, traversing the mountain was getting harder and harder. The wind was slamming into them with enough force to throw a person off balance if they were not careful, making every step seem like a gamble. The air was becoming too thin to breathe. Due to the lack of oxygen, Sonny was starting to feel dizzy and nauseated. It was as though they were all slowly suffocating. Altitude sickness was not something one could overcome with effort. It was subtle and overbearing at the same time, affecting the strong and the weak with no regard to their fitness and endurance. If his luck was bad, an elite athlete could succumb to it faster than a random passerby. It was just a question of your body's innate aptitude and adaptability. Lucky ones were able to get over it after experiencing mild symptoms. The others were sometimes crippled for days or weeks, suffering from all kinds of torturous side effects. Some even died. As though all that wasn't bad enough, it was getting colder too. The warm clothes and fur weren't enough to keep the chill at bay anymore. Sonny felt simultaneously feverish and freezing, cursing every decision he had made in his life to end up here on the endless icy slope. This mountain was not a place for humans, and yet they had to go on. A few hours passed. Despite everything, the three survivors continued to struggle forward, slowly moving higher and higher. Wherever that old path Scholar had talked about was, by now, it couldn't have been far. At least that's what Sonny was hoping for. But at some point, he started to doubt if the path even existed. Maybe the older slave lied. Maybe the path was long ago destroyed by ravages of time. Maybe they had already missed it without even noticing. Just as he was about to fall into despair, they finally found it. It was weathered and narrow, barely enough for two people to walk side by side. The path wasn't paved, but rather cut from the black rock by some unknown tool or magic, winding its way up the mountain like a tail of a sleeping dragon. Here and there it was hidden beneath the snow. But most importantly, it was flat. Sonny had never been that happy to see something flat in his life. Without saying a word, Scholar dropped his rucksack and sat down. He was deathly pale, gasping for air like a fish out of water. Despite that, there was a slight grin on his face. "Told you." Hero gave him a nod and looked around. A few seconds later, he turned back to the triumphant slave. "Stand up. It's not time to rest yet." Scholar blinked a few times, then glanced at him with pleading eyes. Just give me a few minutes." The young soldier was going to retort, but Sonny suddenly put a hand on his shoulder. Hero turned to face him. What is it? It's gone. What is gone? Sunny gestured down, back the way they came. Shifty's body. It's gone. Hero stared at him for a few moments, clearly failing to understand what Sunny was trying to say. Oh right, they don't know that Shifty's name is Shifty. Awkward. He wanted to explain, but both Scholar and Hero seemed to have grasped his meaning. Simultaneously, they moved to the edge of the stone path and looked down, trying to spot the place where Shifty had met his end. Indeed, the splattering of blood could still be seen on the jagged rocks, but the corpse itself was nowhere to be found. Scholar flinched back and crawled as far away from the edge as he could. The young soldier also backed away, instinctively grabbing the handle of his sword. The three of them exchanged tense looks, clearly understanding the implication of Shifty's disappearance. It's the monster, Scholar said, even paler than before. It's following us. Hero gritted his teeth. You are right. And if it is that close, we will inevitably be forced to fight it soon. The idea of fighting the tyrant was as frightening as it was preposterous. He might as well have said that they will all be dead soon. The truth of it was painfully clear to both Sunny and Scholar. But the older slave, surprisingly, did not look panicked. Instead, he lowered his gaze and quietly said, Not necessarily. Hero and Sunny turned to him, all ears. The young soldier raised an eyebrow. Explain? Here it comes. Scholar sighed. The beast had traced us this far in just a day. That means that there are two most probable possibilities. Either it is smart enough to realize where we are going, or it is following the scent of blood. After a bit of thinking, Hero nodded, agreeing with this logic. The older slave smiled slightly and continued. Whether it is one or another, we can throw him off our trail and buy some time. How do we do that? Despite the urgency in Hero's voice, Scholar hesitated and remained silent. Why are you not answering? Speak. The older slave sighed again and slowly, as though against his will, answered. Sunny was waiting for this moment for a while now. We'll just have to make the boy bleed, drag him down the path, then leave him there as bait and go up instead. His sacrifice will save our lives. Right on time. If Sunny wasn't mad and scared witless, of course he would have smiled. His judgment, it seems, was eerily on point. Affirmation was always nice, but not in the situation where being right also meant potentially being used as monster bait. He remembered the words Scholar had spoken back when Shifty was campaigning to have Sunny killed. Don't be too hasty, my friend. The boy might prove useful later on. These words, which had sounded benevolent then, now turned out to hide a much more sinister meaning. What a bastard! Now it all depended on whether or not Hero would decide to follow through with Scholar's plan. The young soldier blinked, astonished. What do you mean, make him bleed? Scholar shook his head. It's simple, really. If the monster knows where we are going, we have no choice but to abandon our plans to reach the mountain pass and go over the peak of the mountain instead. If the monster is following the scent of blood, we have to use one of us as bait to mislead it. He paused. Only by leaving a bleeding man further down the path can we reliably avoid the pursuit, no matter how it is tracking us. Hero stood motionless, his eyes jumping between Scholar and Sunny. After a few seconds, he asked, How can you bring yourself to propose something so vile? The older slave masterfully pretended to look aggrieved and somber. Of course, it pains me, but if we do nothing, all three of us will die. This way, at least, the boy's death will save 2 lives. The gods will reward him for his sacrifice. Gee, what a silver tongue. I'm almost convinced myself. The young soldier opened his mouth, then closed it again, hesitating. Sunny was silently watching the other 2 survivors, measuring his chances of coming on top in a fight. Scholar was already halfway to being a corpse, so overpowering him would not be a problem. Hero, however, presented an obstacle. Chapter 12. The smell of blood. Right now, that obstacle was looking down, avoiding Sonny's gaze. His hand was resting on the sword handle. As always, the young slave had no idea about what was going on inside Hero's perfectly shaped head. The uncertainty was making him nervous. Finally, after some time had passed, the soldier spoke. "I have only one question." Both Sonny and Scholar stared at him while holding their breaths. "Yes? You said that one of us must be sacrificed to save the other two. Why him? From what I see, you are far closer to the grave." "A great question. I was just about to ask it myself." Sonny turned to the older slave, trying very hard to suppress a mocking grin, but to his dismay, Scholar had an answer ready. "Before the first attack, he was already bleeding because of your senior's whip. During the attack, he was drenched in the blood of a fellow slave. His cloak, too, was soaked in it. When the previous owner died, the boy already reeks of blood. Keeping him alive will put us in danger. That's why he is the best choice." The grin died before reaching Sonny's face. "Curse you and your big brain." Scholar's reasoning was appallingly solid. Hero listened, his expression growing darker with each word. Finally, he looked at Sonny, a dangerous light shining in his eyes. "That is true." Sonny felt his mouth getting dry. Cold sweat was running down his spine. He tensed, ready to act. But at that moment, Hero smiled. "Your logic is almost unassailable," he said, unsheathing the sword. "However, you failed to account for one thing." Scholar raised an eyebrow, trying to hide his own nervousness. "What might that be?" The young soldier turned to face him, the smile disappearing from his face. Now, he was radiating thick, practically palpable killing intent. "It's that I know who you are, Your Grace. I also know what you've done, and how you ended up a salve. Just one of the revolting crimes you have committed would be enough to make me want to kill you. So if there is someone among us who deserves to be sacrificed, it's you." Scholar's eyes widened. But the smell of blood." "Don't worry about it. I'll make you bleed enough to overpower whatever residual scent the boy carries." It all happened so fast that Sonny barely had time to react. Hero lunged forward with a speed that seemed almost inhuman. A moment later, Scholar was shrieking on the ground, his leg broken with one strike from the flat side of the young soldier's sword. Not giving him an opportunity to recover, Hero stomped on his other leg, and a sickening sound of shattering bones could be clearly heard. The shriek turned into a sobbing howl. Just like that, Scholar was done for. The brutality of Hero's actions was in such stark contrast with his usually graceful demeanor that Sonny felt blood turning to ice in his veins. This was scary. The soldier gave him a calm look and said in a placid tone, "Wait for me here." Then he grabbed the older slave and dragged him down the path, soon disappearing behind a rock outcropping. After a few minutes, terrible screams could be heard echoing through the wind. Sonny was left alone, trembling. "Crap. This is too much." He still couldn't believe how sudden Scholar's demise came to be, and how ruthless it was. Some time later, Hero was back, acting as though nothing had happened. But it was exactly that normalcy that unnerved Sonny the most. After sorting through the contents of Scholar's rucksack and throwing most of the firewood out, the young soldier put it over his shoulder and nonchalantly turned to the young slave. "Let's go. We need to hurry." Not knowing what to say, Sonny gave him a nod and headed forward. Now there were only two of them left. It was sort of stupid, but Sonny suddenly felt lonesome. Walking on the stone path was much easier than scaling the mountain wall. He even had time for unnecessary thoughts. A strange feeling of melancholy descended on Sonny. Somehow, he began to feel that the end of this nightmare, whatever it might be, was not far off now. They walked in silence for some time before Hero spoke. "Don't feel guilty about what happened. It's not your fault. The decision was mine, and mine alone. The young soldier was a few steps ahead, so Sonny couldn't see his face. Besides, if you knew this man's sins, actually, it's better that you don't renge. Just trust me when I say that killing him was an act of justice. I wonder which one of us feels guilty. These people, always trying to rationalize their actions, always desperate to maintain an illusion of righteousness, even while doing most foul things. Sonny hated the hypocrisy. Not getting an answer, Hero chuckled. You don't like to talk, do you? Well, fair enough. Silence is gold. They didn't speak again after that. Chapter 13. Moment of Truth. The smile froze on Hero's face. He lowered his head as though in shame. After a minute or so passed, shrouded in heavy silence, he finally answered, Yes, I thought that if I do it when you sleep, you won't have to suffer. Unseen to him, a bitter grin appeared on Sonny's face. A long sigh escaped from the young soldier's lips. He rested his back against the cave's wall, still not looking up. I don't expect you to forgive me. This sin, too, will be mine to bear. But, please, if you can, find it in your heart to understand. If things were different, I would have gladly faced that monster to let you escape. But my life does not belong to me alone. There is an unencompassable duty I am sworn to fulfill. Until it's done, I cannot allow myself to die. Sonny laughed. You people, look at you, planning to kill me and still insisting on having a good excuse. How very convenient. I really hate hypocrites like you the most. Why don't you be honest for once? Don't give me that crap. Just say it. I'm going to kill you because it's easy. I'm going to kill you because I want to survive. Hero closed his eyes, his face full of sadness. I'm sorry. I knew you wouldn't be able to understand. What's there to understand? Sonny leaned forward, anger coursing through his veins. Tell me, why do I have to die? The young soldier finally looked up. Even though he couldn't see in the dark, he turned his face in the direction of Sonny's voice. That man was a villain, but he was also right. The scent of blood is too heavy on you. It will attract the beast. You can just let me go, you know. We'll part ways. After that, whether or not the monster finds me won't be your problem. Hero shook his head. Dying in that creature's maw is too cruel a fate. It's better if I do it myself. You are my responsibility, after all. How noble of you. Sonny leaned back, dejected. After a short while he quietly said, You know, when I just came here, I was ready to die. After all, in this whole world, 2 worlds, actually there's not a single soul who cares whether I live or die. When I'm gone, no one will be sad. No one will even remember that I existed. There was a forlorn look on his face. A moment later, however, it was gone, replaced by mirth. But then I changed my mind. Somewhere along the way, I decided to survive. I must survive, no matter what. Hero gave him a thoughtful look. To live a life worth remembering? Sonny grinned. A dark gleam appeared in his eyes. Number, to spite you all. The young soldier was silent for a few moments, then nodded, accepting this answer. He rose to his feet. Don't worry, I'll make it quick. Aren't you overly confident? What makes you think you'll be able to kill me? Maybe I'll kill you instead. Hero shook his head. I doubt that. But in the next second, he staggered and fell on one knee. The young man's face turned deathly pale, and with a pained groan, he suddenly vomited blood. A satisfied smile appeared on Sonny's face. Finally, Hero was standing on his knees, the lower part of his face covered in blood. Astonished, he was staring at his hands, trying to understand what had happened to him. What magic is this? With wide eyes and a pale face, he turned to Sonny. Was that thief right? Did you put the curse of the shadow god on us? Sonny sighed. I wish that I had the ability to throw divine curses around, but no. To tell you the truth, I don't have any abilities at all. Then, how? The young slave shrugged. That's why I poisoned you all. Hero flinched, trying to comprehend his words. What? After the tyrant first attacked, you sent me to search for water. While gathering flagons from the dead soldiers, I squeezed bloodbane juice into each one, except my own, of course. Not enough to taste it, but enough to slowly kill anyone who would drink from them. The soldier gritted his teeth, struggling through pain. A sudden realization appeared on his face. So that's why the other two were in such bad shape. Sunny nodded. Shifty drank the most, so his condition worsened the fastest. Scholar was also not long for this world, but you finished him off before the poison could. Yourself, however, it was as though bloodbane had no effect on you at all. I was really starting to get worried. Hero's face darkened. I see. I understand. He thought about something, then looked at Sunny with surprise. But back then you didn't know that we will turn on you. Sunny just laughed. Oh, please, it was obvious. Shifty was the kind of man who would kill for a pair of boots. Scholar was like a wolf in sheep's clothing. People are selfish and cruel in the best of situations. Was I supposed to believe that those two weren't going to do something terrible to me when faced with certain death? Hero spat more blood. Then, what about me? You? A disdainful expression appeared on Sunny's face. You are the worst of them. Why? Sunny looked at him and leaned forward. I might have not learned much in my short life, but I do know one thing, he said, all traces of humor gone from his voice. Now there was only cold, callous contempt. Sunny's face hardened as he spat. There is nothing more pathetic than a slave who begins to trust his slaver. Hearing these words, Hero lowered his head. I see. Then, suddenly, he laughed. You are a wicked little shit, aren't you? Sunny rolled his eyes. There's no need to be rude. But Hero wasn't listening to him. Good. This is good. My conscience will be clearer. The young slave sighed in irritation. What are you mumbling about? Just die already. Hero chuckled and suddenly pierced him with a stare. Somehow, he didn't look so sick anymore. You see, that plan would have worked if I was a normal human. But, alas, my soul core has awakened long ago. I've slain countless enemies and absorbed their power. Bloodbane poison, unpleasant as it might be, can never kill me. Crap. Sunny turned around and tried to run away, but it was already too late. Something hit him in the back, sending his body crashing into the rock wall. With a scream, he felt a sharp pain piercing his left side. Rolling out of the cave, Sunny clutched his chest, scrambled back onto his feet and ran, trying to escape the narrow crevice. He managed to reach the old path, finally being able to see the stars and the pale moon shining brightly in the night sky. But it was as far as he was able to get. Stop. As the cold voice sounded behind him, Sunny froze. If Hero really had an awakened soul core, he had no chances of getting away from him. In a fight, he had no chances at all. Turn around. The young slave obediently turned, holding his hands up. He looked at Hero, who was wiping the blood off his face with a displeased look in his eyes. The two of them stared at each other, shivering in the murderous cold. Was it worth it? No matter. Despite it all, I will be true to my promise. I'll make it quick. The soldier unsheathed his sword. Do you have any last words? Sunny did not answer. However, a small silver bell suddenly appeared in his hand. Hero frowned. Where were you hiding that thing? Sunny shook the bell. A beautiful, clear ringing sound flowed over the mountain, filling the night with an enchanting melody. What are you doing? Stop! The young slave dutifully stopped. What was? Right under Hero's bewildered eyes, the silver bell disappeared into thin air. He looked at Sunny, stumped and suspicious. Tell me, what did you just do? But Sunny didn't answer. In fact, he hadn't said a single word ever since escaping the cave. Right now, he wasn't even breathing. Hero, on the other hand, continued to speak. "Tell me right now, or you will regret it." He scowled. "Why are you not saying anything?" The shivering boy just stared at him, completely silent. No, he was staring into the darkness behind him. Hero's eyes widened. What? Chapter 12. The smell of blood. Right now, that obstacle was looking down, avoiding Sonny's gaze. His hand was resting on the sword handle. As always, the young slave had no idea about what was going on inside Hero's perfectly shaped head. The uncertainty was making him nervous. Finally, after some time had passed, the soldier spoke. "I have only one question." Both Sonny and Scholar stared at him while holding their breaths. "Yes? You said that one of us must be sacrificed to save the other two. Why him? From what I see, you are far closer to the grave." "A great question. I was just about to ask it myself." Sonny turned to the older slave, trying very hard to suppress a mocking grin, but to his dismay, Scholar had an answer ready. "Before the first attack, he was already bleeding because of your senior's whip. During the attack, he was drenched in the blood of a fellow slave. His cloak, too, was soaked in it. When the previous owner died, the boy already reeks of blood. Keeping him alive will put us in danger. That's why he is the best choice." The grin died before reaching Sonny's face. "Curse you and your big brain." Scholar's reasoning was appallingly solid. Hero listened, his expression growing darker with each word. Finally, he looked at Sonny, a dangerous light shining in his eyes. "That is true." Sonny felt his mouth getting dry. Cold sweat was running down his spine. He tensed, ready to act. But at that moment, Hero smiled. "Your logic is almost unassailable," he said, unsheathing the sword. "However, you failed to account for one thing." Scholar raised an eyebrow, trying to hide his own nervousness. "What might that be?" The young soldier turned to face him, the smile disappearing from his face. Now, he was radiating thick, practically palpable killing intent. "It's that I know who you are, Your Grace. I also know what you've done, and how you ended up a salve. Just one of the revolting crimes you have committed would be enough to make me want to kill you. So if there is someone among us who deserves to be sacrificed, it's you." Scholar's eyes widened. But the smell of blood." "Don't worry about it. I'll make you bleed enough to overpower whatever residual scent the boy carries." It all happened so fast that Sonny barely had time to react. Hero lunged forward with a speed that seemed almost inhuman. A moment later, Scholar was shrieking on the ground, his leg broken with one strike from the flat side of the young soldier's sword. Not giving him an opportunity to recover, Hero stomped on his other leg, and a sickening sound of shattering bones could be clearly heard. The shriek turned into a sobbing howl. Just like that, Scholar was done for. The brutality of Hero's actions was in such stark contrast with his usually graceful demeanor that Sonny felt blood turning to ice in his veins. This was scary. The soldier gave him a calm look and said in a placid tone, "Wait for me here." Then he grabbed the older slave and dragged him down the path, soon disappearing behind a rock outcropping. After a few minutes, terrible screams could be heard echoing through the wind. Sonny was left alone, trembling. Crap. This is too much. He still couldn't believe how sudden Scholar's demise came to be, and how ruthless it was. Some time later, Hero was back, acting as though nothing had happened. But it was exactly that normalcy that unnerved Sonny the most. After sorting through the contents of Scholar's rucksack and throwing most of the firewood out, the young soldier put it over his shoulder and nonchalantly turned to the young slave. "Let's go. We need to hurry." Not knowing what to say, Sonny gave him a nod and headed forward. Now there were only two of them left. It was sort of stupid, but Sunny suddenly felt lonesome. Walking on the stone path was much easier than scaling the mountain wall. He even had time for unnecessary thoughts. A strange feeling of melancholy descended on Sunny. Somehow, he began to feel that the end of this nightmare, whatever it might be, was not far off now. They walked in silence for some time before Hero spoke. "Don't feel guilty about what happened. It's not your fault. The decision was mine, and mine alone." The young soldier was a few steps ahead, so Sunny couldn't see his face. "Besides, if you knew this man's sins, actually, it's better that you don't revenge. Just trust me when I say that killing him was an act of justice." I wonder which one of us feels guilty. These people, always trying to rationalize their actions, always desperate to maintain an illusion of righteousness, even while doing most foul things. Sunny hated the hypocrisy. Not getting an answer, Hero chuckled. "You don't like to talk, do you? Well, fair enough. Silence is gold." They didn't speak again after that. Chapter 15. Shadow Slave. Prepare for appraisal. Sunny found himself in a space between dream and reality. It was an endless black void, illuminated by a myriad of stars. Between those stars, countless strings of silver light were woven into a beautiful and inconceivably complex net, forming various nexuses and constellations. It was truly breathtaking. Somehow, Sunny understood that he was seeing the inner workings of the nightmare spell. He also couldn't help but think that it looked a lot like the celestial equivalent of a neural network. If so, was the spell alive? This was a question that countless people had been asking themselves for the past few decades. The best answer they had come up with was that there was no way to know. The spell was neither alive nor dead, neither sentient nor mindless. It was more of a function than a creature. But Sunny was in no mood to ponder philosophical questions. He was eagerly awaiting his boon. The spell was still appraising his performance. However, the first reward had nothing to do with it. "You have received a memory, Puppeteer's Shroud." Yes! Sunny felt incredibly elated. He was almost ready to do a happy dance. That memory belonged to Mountain King, who was an awakened tyrant, which meant that the memory itself was of the awakened rank. Getting it was a stroke of incredible luck. There were 7 ranks to everything in the spell. These ranks were in order of growing power: dormant, awakened, ascended, transcendent, supreme, sacred, and divine, with the exclusion of nightmare creatures, who were ranked as dormant, awakened, fallen, corrupted, great, cursed, and unholy. From the spell's point of view, Sunny was a dormant human. Having a memory of a higher rank than his own soul core would be of great help once he enters the dream realm. The power gap between different ranks simply could not be overestimated. He wanted to take a look at the Puppeteer's Shroud, but there was no more time. The spell was done with its appraisal. Here in the void, its voice didn't sound subtle and familiar anymore. Rather, it seemed like the universe itself was speaking. Sunny held his breath, listening. "Aspirant, your trial is over." A nameless slave ascended the Black Mountain. Both heroes and monsters fell by his hand. Unbroken, he entered the ruined temple of a long-forgotten god and spilled his blood on the sacred altar. The gods were dead, and yet they listened. "You have defeated a dormant beast, Mountain King's larva. You have defeated 3 dormant humans, names unknown. You have defeated an awakened human, Auro of the 9. You have defeated an awakened tyrant, Mountain King. You have received the Shadow God's blessing. You have achieved the impossible. Final appraisal, glorious. Your treachery truly knows no bounds." That final part was not really necessary, as far as Sunny was concerned, but he was still pretty satisfied with the praise from the spell. He felt like his chances of evolving his aspect to an awakened or even ascended one were pretty high. His overall power was still dependent on the rank of his soul core, which would remain dormant until much later, but the rank of the aspect itself would do wonders for his overall potential. Dreamer Sunless, receive your boon. He was an aspirant, no more. Sunny grinned. You have been bestowed a true name, lost from light. His jaw dropped. A true name! He had received a true name! Never in his wildest dreams did Sunny dream of becoming one of the chosen few to accomplish such feat, and in his very first nightmare to boot. Not even all of the saints could boast of having one. He was an elite now, a bona fide cream of the crop. He was going to be rich. But the rewards kept coming. Your aspect is ready to evolve. Evolve aspect? What kind of a question is that? Sunny crossed his fingers and said yes. Dormant aspect temple slave is evolving. New aspect acquired. Aspect rank, divine. Sunny fell over. Aspect name, shadow slave. Divine. It's divine. Sunny was standing on his knees, stupefied. The shock was so great that for a second there he lost all control over his limbs and fell. It said, divine, right? He raised a trembling hand and rubbed his eyes, making sure that he was awake, or rather conscious, since, technically, he was still sleeping in the underground vault of the police station. Confused by all this terminology, Sunny silently summoned the runes and found the lines describing his aspect. Aspect, shadow slave. Aspect rank, divine. Aspect description. You are a miraculous shadow left behind by a dead god. As a divine shadow, you possess plenty of strange and wondrous powers. However, your existence is empty and lonesome. You mourn the passing of your former master and long to find a new one. Innate ability, shadow bond. Ability description. Find a worthy master and let them know your true name. Once they recite it out loud, you will be bound to their will, unable to disobey any command. It is improper for a shadow, let alone a divine one, to walk around without a master. That was a lot to digest. First of all, Sunny felt his heart beating faster. He heard it right. All the suffering and horror he had experienced in the first nightmare paid off in the end. A divine aspect. He had received a divine aspect. Anything above awakened was rare and immensely valuable. People with ascended aspects were rare enough to be fought over by various factions. The factions themselves were built around singular powerhouses with transcendent or supreme aspects. And he had never, ever heard of anyone acquiring a divine one. Never. Anything with the divine prefix was so hard to find that it mostly lived in the realm of myths and legends. After all, the human race had not reached that high yet. It was only slightly more than a decade since humans managed to finally conquer the third nightmare and receive the ability to evolve their cores to transcendent rank. As transcendents or saints, as they were called in the real world, powerful awakened ruled over the dream realm, but even they did not dare to face nightmare creatures of higher ranks. Subsequently, there were not a lot of memories and echoes of supreme rank around, let alone sacred or divine. The same went for aspects. And yet Sunny just got one. He grinned, driven half mad by joy and arrogance. However, his jubilation was a little muddied. After all, there was that weird innate ability. Of course, he had no intention of becoming someone's magical slave, with no free will of his own. To hell with that. But it wasn't that bad. All he had to do to avoid that fate was to conceal his true name. No one except for him could see his status. That meant that Sunny just had to keep his mouth shut, and no one will know that he even had one. It meant giving up on all the benefits that someone who was bestowed a true name after the first nightmare was entitled to, but it all paled in comparison with a divine aspect. Not a problem, Sunny thought with a smirk. If the spell had the ability to laugh, it would surely do so after hearing his thoughts. However, it didn't too. Instead, it began to speak again. The first seal is broken. Awakening Dormant Powers. Chapter 16. Rebirth. Sonny felt something waking up inside of him. With a startled cry, he clutched his chest and stared into the darkness, trying to understand what was happening. The feeling was not painful or unpleasant, yet it was like nothing he had ever experienced. It was as though his soul was being shaken awake, infused with strange new energy. However, that energy did not come from some outside source. Rather, it was coming from within, as though it had always been there, sleeping. The energy filled every fiber of his being. Sonny felt his emotions becoming clearer and sharper. Then, his body began to change too. He felt as though a miniature star was burning in the center of his chest. Waves of heat were radiating from it, slowly reaching his stomach and shoulders, then his arms and legs, then his hands and feet. Under that heat, his bones, muscles, organs, and blood vessels were being rebuilt and revitalized. Sonny felt like he was being reborn. He was becoming stronger, faster, healthier. It was euphoric. With each second, his transformation was becoming more profound. New confidence settled in Sonny's heart. He was not a weak, frail street kid anymore. He was not as vulnerable against anyone who would wish to bully him as he was in the past. With his powers awakened and his will tempered by the horrors of the first nightmare, he was now someone you would not want to cross. After some time had passed, the star burning in his chest finally cooled down. The heat was replaced with a soothing coldness. That coldness washed over Sonny's body, taking away all the aches and discomforts that had been accumulated there over the years. Then it moved up, reaching his brain and, finally, his eyes. His vision strangely doubled. He could still see the void, populated by an endless pattern of stars, but he could also see something different. A silent, calm, dark sea illuminated by a lonely black Sunday. From his previous knowledge, Sonny knew that this was his so-called Sea of Soul, but he also knew that it was supposed to look quite different. For starters, it was supposed to be much more lively. The star hanging above the visual representation of his soul core was supposed to be burning with bright light, filling the soul sea with a warm, blinding shining. However, Sonny's soul was dark and lightless. That's strange. He took a look at the black Sunday. At a closer examination, it actually turned out to be transparent. It's just that with no other major source of light around, the star had appeared to be as dark as its surroundings. Also, no one was supposed to be here except for him. It was his soul, after all. But Sonny had a nagging feeling that somewhere just beyond the periphery of his vision, hidden in the darkness, shapeless forms were constantly moving. No matter how he turned his head, he couldn't catch a clear glimpse of them, and yet the feeling would not go away. Not wishing to waste any more time on this right now, Sonny turned back to the black sun and finally spotted two spheres of light orbiting around it, as though caught in the soul core's gravity well. A subtle smile appeared on his face. These were his memories, Silver Bell and Pupetter's Shroud. Later there would be dozens of such spheres here. If he was lucky, he would even acquire an echo or two. The spell's voice suddenly pulled him out of the Sea of Soul. Awakening Aspect Ability. This is it. The moment of truth, Sonny thought. Divine aspect or not, his immediate future still depended on the first aspect ability he would receive. His role in the dream realm would be based on its characteristics. If it was a combat ability, he would be most useful on the front lines of the bloody battles against the nightmare creatures. If it was tied to sorcery, he would likely become a powerful but fragile ranged fighter. If it was something having to do with utility, he would be a vitally important part of the behind-the-scenes workings of the dream realm. Utility abilities were also extremely valued in the real world, where Awakened performed many tasks that kept it going. If he was lucky, he could even become a healer. Healers were very rare, and as such, sought-after specialists. Aspect ability acquired. Aspect ability name. Shadow control. Sunny hurriedly summoned the runes. He wanted to go to the description of his new ability right away, but then decided to give his overall information a look first. Name. Sunless. True name. Lost from light. Rank. Dreamer. Shadow core. Dormant. Shadow fragments. 12 1/1000ths. What? What is that? Where the rank of his soul core was supposed to be written, a mysterious shadow core appeared instead. Sunny looked at it, blinking. He had never heard of anyone having a different kind of core before. Was he that unique? This enigmatic shadow core would certainly explain why his sea of soul looked so strange. And also, he moved his eyes down, noticing the shadow fragments counter. Usually, there was supposed to be an indicator of the number of soul shards consumed. However, it was nowhere to be seen. Do I actually have a completely different progression path than all awakened? The idea was as exciting as it was frightening. Not having to fight for resources with anybody else was an incredible advantage. Most of the human society in the dream realm was built around the acquisition of soul shards. If he had no need to gather them to evolve, not only would he be able to become more powerful with incredible speed, he would also be completely self-sufficient. On the other hand, he had no idea how to acquire these shadow fragments. However, he had gotten 12 of them somehow already. So whatever it was that he had to do, he had already done it in the first nightmare. I'll have to explore this carefully. Satisfied with this decision, Sunny continued to study the runes. Memories. Silver bell. Puppeteer's shroud. Echoes. Blank. Attributes. Fated. Mark of divinity. Child of shadows. Aspect. Shadow slave. Aspect rank. Divine. Aspect abilities. Shadow control. Aspect ability. Description. Your shadow is more independent than most. It is an invaluable helper. What is that supposed to mean? Sunny held his breath and began to read the description again, but at that moment, a new set of runes appeared just below it. Simultaneously, the spell's voice resounded in the black void. All power has a price. You have received a flaw. Your flaw is... Sunny read the runes, and his eyes widened in horror. Oh, no. No, no, no. Chapter 17. 3 simple words. He closed his eyes, then opened them again, hoping that the runes would disappear. Please, be gone. Please. But the runes were still there, shining slightly, as though mocking him. Flaw. Clear conscience. Flaw description. You cannot lie. Sunny stared at these 3 simple words, feeling like there was a bottomless abyss opening right beneath his feet. The spell, which was usually frivolous with its descriptions, decided to be straight and on point this time. There were only 3 words. They left him no room to maneuver. Can't lie. I can't lie? Me? How am I supposed to live if I can't lie? Sunny's very survival was predicated on his ability to deceive and outsmart other people. Even the spell itself congratulated him on his treachery. Without the ability to lie, he wouldn't be able to achieve anything. Not to mention, his heart suddenly felt as though it was about to stop. If he could only tell the truth, how was he supposed to hide his true name? Wouldn't anyone be able to turn him into an obedient slave by simply asking a couple of innocent questions? Shit! Sunny was about to scream and curse, but at that moment the spell spoke again. Wake up, lost from light. The black void spun and disappeared. Sunny opened his eyes. The armored ceiling of the police station's vault hung above him. No one would call its aesthetics beautiful, but to him, it was the most majestic sight. Only now did he realize how much he had missed the real world. It was safe and familiar. There were no monsters or slavers, well, at least officially. There was no constant fear of torturous death. It was home. In addition, Sunny felt incredible. The cold, that had crept deep into his bones during the nightmare was gone, taking with it all the pain that his wounded body had been enduring day after day. His feet and wrists were not in agony, his back had forgotten the bite of the whip, and he could even breathe without feeling the sharp edges of his broken ribs cutting deeper and deeper into his lungs. What a blessing! The sudden disappearance of pain, coupled with the new vitality that permeated his body, almost made Sonny cry. I really survived. He slowly looked down, and then froze, breathless. On a cheap plastic chair, placed beside his reinforced medical bed, sat the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She had short, raven-black hair and icy blue eyes. Her flawless skin was smooth, supple, and as white as snow. Actually, this was Sonny's first time meeting someone as pale as he himself was. However, while Sonny's pallor looked strange and unhealthy, the beautiful stranger was nothing short of striking. The woman seemed to be in her late 20s. She was wearing a dark blue uniform with silver epaulets and black leather boots. The jacket of her uniform was casually unbuttoned, revealing a black tank top beneath. Currently, she was stretching her arms above her head, clearly bored and sleepy. The gesture forced the thin fabric to tighten, provocatively accentuating her full breasts. Mesmerized, Sonny almost missed the fact that there was a shoulder insignia on the woman's left sleeve. There were 3 stars on it. 3 stars. Huh, he thought, distracted. 3 stars means an ascended. Huh, yeah. Wait, an ascended? But before Sonny could fully digest the meaning of this word, he realized that the woman was staring at him too. What are you looking at? She said, not a gram of humor in her voice. Sonny blinked a couple of times, embarrassed, and quickly came up with an excuse. Then he opened his mouth and answered, Your breasts. A second later, his eye widened in absolute horror. Because he wasn't planning to say those words at all. His mouth moved on its own. A wave of terror suddenly drowned his mind. The woman slowly smiled, with a dangerous gleam in her eyes. Then, without any warning, she moved her hand and slapped Sonny across the face. Sonny's whole body was turned around. If it wasn't for the restraints holding him in place, he would have probably flown off the bed. For a moment, he even saw stars. But it could still be considered getting off lightly. An ascended, the woman was an ascended. She could have torn his head clean off with a flick of a finger. Why did he have to offend someone so powerful, of all people? Meanwhile, the woman cleared her throat and crossed her arms. Are you awake now? Sonny held his numb cheek and carefully nodded. Good. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't just say anything that comes to your mind, especially to girls. It's not like you haven't seen a girl before, right? Say, thank you. I definitely will not, Sonny thought. But instead, his mouth moved on its own and he said, I've seen plenty, but no one as beautiful as you. Then he flinched back, his face as red as a lobster. The woman stared at him for a few seconds, and then burst into laughter. I see you haven't met a lot of awakened then. By awakened standards, I'm below average. Sonny glanced at her with doubt. The woman shook her head. As your soul core develops, the body gets rid of all its imperfections, so it's hard to find an unattractive awakened, especially among the stronger ones. Live long enough, and you might just become a flower boy yourself. Then she gave him a thorough look and added, Well, maybe. In any case, since you're awake, welcome back to the land of the living. Congratulations on surviving your first nightmare, Sleeper Sunless. Sleeper Sunless. That was how people would address him now, at least in the short span of days until the winter solstice. After that, he would either return from the dream realm as an awakened, or not return at all. It felt strange to have a title put before his name. In the past, Sonny was rarely even addressed by name. People mostly called him things like boy, punk, brat, or hey you. But now he even had a title. Sleeper Sunless. Actually, The correct term was dreamer. But humans had their own set of words for those infected by the nightmare spell. Carriers who had just finished their first nightmare were called sleepers because of how they interacted with the spell. Basically, once his spirit enters the spell, his body was going to fall into slumber. That slumber would continue for days, weeks, or even months, however long it takes him to escape the dream realm. Hence the term sleeper. Once he escapes and becomes an awakened, he would live his life normally during the day and return to the dream realm every time he falls asleep. The awakened were called the same by the spell and the humans. That word was also sometimes used as a general term for all carriers. Then, if he were to decide to enter a second nightmare and manage to survive, he would become an ascended people, called them masters. Masters could enter and exit the dream realm as they wished. Some even chose to never come back there at all. More than that, they traveled between the worlds physically, not just in spirit. And then, above the masters, there were saints, those who had conquered the third nightmare and earned the right to call themselves transcendent. They were as powerful as demigods and even more rare. Not only could they travel between the real world and the dream realm, but they could also take others with them. But coming back to masters, the beautiful woman stood up and approached the reinforced medical bed. With practiced moves, she began to undo the restraint holding Sunny in place. I am Ascended Jet. You can call me Master Jet. These past 3 days, I was on watch duty due to your nightmare. Right. Before I fell asleep, the policeman told me that an awakened would arrive in a few hours to monitor my condition, to kill the nightmare creature if I die and let it through. Sunny was unwilling to open his mouth, terrified that all sorts of truths would come spilling out. But there were things he simply had to know. Master Jet, I have a question. Go on. Why would a master be put on watch duty? Isn't it below your pay grade? Jet gave him a dark look. You're smarter than you seem. Recently, there was a lot of gates opening in this sector. Most of the local awakened are either wounded or occupied with the cleanup, or dead. It's always like that, close to the winter solstice. She opened the final restraint and took a step back. Plus, there's not a lot of awakened who, like me, directly work for the government. It's by far the least lucrative or glorious carrier one of us can choose. Would you abandon wealth and fame to work abysmal hours and risk your life, fueled only by altruism and sense of duty? Sunny wanted to say something flattering. Instead, he looked Master Jet right in the eyes and smirked. Of course not. I'm not an idiot. Damn this damn flaw. Damn. She stared at him with a humorless expression. Sunny thought that he was going to get slapped again. But instead, Jet smiled. See, I was right. You really are smart.